Hello everyone, I'm Ciprian Borodescu, AI Product Manager at Algolia. I have an engineering and entrepreneurial background. I was the co-founder and CEO at Morphle, the AI startup that got acquired by Algolia at the beginning of last year. In my spare time, I'm hosting the Get Your AI On podcast, where I invite founders, entrepreneurs, AI business leaders, and data scientists to share their experience in dealing with problems that can be solved through intelligent use of data. I'm passionate about helping developers succeed through the use of AI. And AI personalization is the topic I want to talk about today. My aim with this presentation is not only to provide answers, as is usually the case with these kinds of presentations, but for you to have more profound questions about why you're doing personalization, who's it for, and what's it for. But first, I want to tell you a story. It's about the journey of a talented developer joining a new team, her ups and downs of building great user experiences, putting end user needs and preferences first, and the continuous pressure of growing a product. The story of our developer starts with her first day in a new product team of an e-commerce company, where she's being told about project personalization, as it was called long before she joined the team. The team worked on it for a few months and made decent progress on the engineering side. Being charismatic, a people person, and experienced full-stack developer, she was confident that it wouldn't take long for her to get comfortable with the team, understand the code base, and start making a few contributions of her own. 6 months into the project, however, things started to unfold in a ravaging manner. After multiple iterations, they were still struggling to grow the product metrics and had difficulties understanding user behaviors on their online store. Consequently, the company leadership was growing impatient with the lack of results and was ready to pull the plug on the whole project. The entire team was summoned into a meeting one afternoon. Initially scheduled for 1 hour, the meeting stretched for 3 intense hours. Haven't we all been there at one point or another in our professional lives? At the end of it, she felt drained, stuck, and out of breath. They all were. The next day, the PM invited them for a brunch. Away from the office, a change of scenery was necessary. "How's everybody feeling today?" he asks, with a soft smile on his face. Silence. About 10 seconds of awkward stillness settled between them. Nobody was even breathing. The PM calmly takes out a piece of paper and continues. "We were facing the wrong way all this time, away from the user. And in doing so, we failed to recognize the dysfunctions of our personalization engine we've built for the past 12 months. What do you think those are?" A lively conversation ensued, and an ad hoc brainstorming session was in effect, and our hero developer just witnessed in awe the miracle that happened. Her team was throwing ideas back and forth, and suddenly she saw herself immersed into the conversation, contributing and gaining more clarity and confidence in the future of their team and product. And on that folded piece of paper, the team wrote the 7 dysfunctions of their personalization engine. They got to work. Just 3 months later, things started to turn around in a major way, as a result of the adjustments they were able to make as a team. Users engaged more with the app and website. Business metrics did grow as a result of that, and instead of shutting down the project, they got more funding to continue executing on their project personalization. The fictional story of our young developer and her team ends here. But the real story, yours and mine, continues. Let's now explore the 7 dysfunctions that the team in the story identified and fixed, and see how those lessons might apply to our own real project personalization. The first one is lack of user privacy awareness. Yes, 83% of end users expect personalization within moments and hours, but at the same time, up to 80% of consumers are sensitive to companies' security and privacy practices regarding their online data. At first, this might seem like a paradox, personalizing user experiences while protecting their data privacy. If this is indeed the case, how can we solve it? One proposal is to make the personalization engine privacy aware by allowing the user to opt in and out and to decide the conditions under which their user data profiles can be used. Users can activate, even partially, the data that is necessary for the level of personalization they deem comfortable and appropriate for the stage they're at. An end user might have a settings page that looks something like this. Notice the informational, navigational, and transactional profile. And behind the scenes, we might have the following JSON representations of the same user profile: informational, navigational, and transactional. The second dysfunction of personalization engines is no real-time support. Ideally, you want your personalization engine to cover real-time predictions and real-time learning. As such, there may be 3 levels in terms of real-time readiness. Level 0, batch processing, where predictions are generated once per day or even more frequently and saved into the database. When an API request is being made, the pre-generated and saved predictions will be served. Level 1, online or real-time inference capability, which is a mechanism of generating and saving, even caching predictions into the database when the API request is being made. And finally, real-time learning, which means that besides inference being real-time, machine learning models are also updated in a continuous manner. Now, the impact of real-time on the quality of predictions varies with the user type, and as expected, first-time visitors might benefit from less personalization than the authenticated users, simply because we have more data on the latter, such as repeat sessions and previous orders that can be used for better personalization. Third dysfunction, poor data quality. Data is one of the most underutilized assets that companies possess, and depending on where we fit in the Gartner AI maturity model, we have to take into consideration a few critical aspects. First, the cold start problem. There seems to be the expectation that the new user should have the same personalized experience as returning users, when in fact new users have little to no data. Obviously, this is not possible, and the classic solution is to have a hybrid approach. First, a content-centric approach for a user landing for the first time on your website, and then shift it to a user-centric approach once you know more about the user. The second aspect is user identity reconciliation. Performant personalization engine should consider session unification and handle or at least support user identity consistency across sessions, user states, and devices. And finally, combining different data sources. Now, we know that data exists in multiple platforms today, so how do you stitch it together such that a personalization system can properly use it? We've seen that the first step is to ensure user identity reconciliation. The second step is to build a feature store for the entire personalization system. It's a known fact that machine learning engineers spend 80% of their time doing feature engineering because it's a difficult process. But they are doing it because, as it has been shown in a paper from 2014, practical lessons from predicting clicks on ads at Facebook, having the right features is the most important thing in developing machine learning models. However, there is one rule to remember: garbage in, garbage out. we cannot brute force our way out by throwing data at a personalization system and hope that will produce good results. Data quality always trumps data quantity. When most developers hear about intent-based personalization, they think about recommendations. But a performant personalization system shouldn't limit itself to just recommending items. For e-commerce journeys, we might be looking at the following types of intents: goal-oriented intents, affinity-oriented, or metrics-oriented intents. And it's important to note that we're expecting users to manifest a combination of intents and potentially a dominant one at any given point in time. User intents can be represented as a graph. As you can see here, users U linked to their sessions S, and during each session the user interacts with products P, each with their own attributes A. Users can also search, in which case there are common queries linked to items and categories of items, and that's where the complexity of the graph increases even more. Now, being able to accurately predict user intent is critical for personalization systems if you want to go beyond product recommendations. And in a REST API format, you'd expect a response such as this one for intent type goals, for affinities, and for metrics-oriented intents. In practice, you want to be able to explore the user intent graph and easily extract users based on any given combination of intents, like this. And this is where intent-based segmentation comes into play. And there are 4 levels that we should consider for our personalization systems. Level 0, segmentation based on raw user attributes, such as devices, age, city, and so on. Level 1, segmentation based on predicted values, like we've seen above. Level 2, segmentation based on raw and predictive values. And finally, lookalike segmentation, whereas you can identify users that are similar to the ones in the target group. This brings us to the next dysfunction, a personalization system that is not composable. If we admit that personalization is more than just displaying a recommendation widget on our product detail page, then as developers, we need an easy way to orchestrate personalized experiences. For example, if a user has over 50% add to cart probability, we should have the means to orchestrate something like displaying a promo banner to help with closing that transaction. To accomplish that, we need a composable approach, and the API-first architecture is the developer-friendly way to accomplish this. So, at the minimum, you'd want to have access to the Models API, where you'd be able to configure the machine learning models that are part of the personalization system, whether we're talking about frequently bought together, related products, or intent predictions. Second, User Profile API, which would allow you to request raw or predicted properties for an authenticated or anonymous user. And third, Segments API. This is used to group and filter users based on raw and predictive values. The sixth dysfunction of personalization system is low performance metrics. Here are some of the model metrics that you should be expecting from a transparent AI-based personalization engine. You want to know how much each feature contributes to model's predictions, also known as correlation metrics. You also want to know accuracy, precision, recall, F1 score. All of them can be calculated from the confusion matrix. And of course, business KPIs. Now, when it comes to measuring the business results, after deploying a personalization system, we must be careful not to be myopic about it. And let me give you an example. A lot of companies would evaluate only the click-through rate and would conclude that variant B is the winning one. But if you inspect it closer, you see that in fact, in terms of conversion rate, variant A is the best. Well, is it? In fact, if you calculate, you realize it's essentially the same thing. But if you take a step further and look at the average order value, variant B produces most revenues. Not because of better conversion rates, but because users add more items or more expensive items to the cart, increasing its average order value. In conclusion, a personalization system should be transparent with the performance of machine learning models that sit under the hood, as well as the business results once the personalization has been implemented and deployed into production. Finally, AI ethics immaturity. Imagine you're building a system to rank items on a user's newsfeed. Your goal is to maximize user engagements, which means likelihood of users to click on it. But you soon realize that optimizing for user engagement alone can lead to questionable ethical concerns, because extreme posts tend to get more engagement, and the algorithm will learn to prioritize extreme content. Doesn't that sound familiar? Unfortunately, the ethical implications of personalization systems is an afterthought, and companies pay attention only when it hurts their bottom line. Mind the ethical gap from the scoping stage of your project personalization, and don't let it surprise you later on. The one question that usually helps me identify ethical blind spots is, if we can build it, should we? In other words, AI is like a knife that can be both used in a surgery and in a fight. And I believe developers have a responsibility in leading the way AI is being applied. In closing, it's clear that building a performant personalization engine is not a trivial task. That's why for the past year we've been working on a new product which will be released in a private beta soon that fixes the 7 dysfunctions we've talked about. If you are interested in getting early access, here's where you can sign up for the waiting list. And by the way, you are invited for a demo at 7:15 p.m. Central European Time. This is where you can find me. Please reach out if you have any questions or suggestions. I would love to hear from you. Thank you very much.